So, is it possible to not have a name as a human being, right? Since we care so much about naming things. I think, oh, yes, I think this is part of what distinguishes us from lesser animals. Part of what makes us distinctly human is that we have the ability to name things, right? We have the ability to give names to things, and that is quite special, isn't it? Right? No other animal can do that. We have the ability to to grant authority, or to grant power. And maybe then you could say, what a leap. Where is the power in a name, right? Like how do you correlate, how do you go from names to power, right? How do you go from names to power? And maybe let me hold on to that thought for now. Let me hold on to that thought for now. Let's go back and ask, why is it possible to not have a name? Right? Is it possible to not have a name? Well, yes, I imagine it's possible to not have a name, or it's possible to not care for a name. Huh. Well, okay, maybe I don't think it's possible to not have a name. I think it's more so possible to not care for a name, and you're not going to care for a name if you're a base human. If you say you grew up in the wild, like an animal, right? Like a wild animal, or you were abused as a child to the extent that you never had a development for language. Say maybe like you were neglected by your parents. I just remembered this experiment. It wasn't much of an experiment. It was something like, child abuse, where like it's not an experiment. I wouldn't say it's an experiment, but it's something like, well, it was a case. Yes, it was a case study, where I forgot the child's name. Was it Jeannie, or something like that? The psychologists named her something something archetypal, something like Jeannie. So yeah, like there's this child that was she was locked in the basement of her parents' home, strapped to a porta potty, and kept alone in the dark for several years. Since she was pretty young, all the way up until she was like maybe like 13, 15, all up until the time she was an adolescent. And all her time she lived in that darkness, strapped on that porta potty, dirty. And they just never let her out of there. They never talked to her. Man, imagine, fuck me, bro. Imagine that shit. Fuck. Man, just imagine that. And she just didn't know. It's like she lived in those four, in that four corner wall, that segment of darkness, for something like a whole decade of her life, or a decade plus. And she never really developed a language system. It was all messed up. And she was also, because she lived in the dark all her life, she turned out to have a very bad eyesight, or like she couldn't. I don't want to have to search these things up. I'm just going off of what I remember. But like, she had a problem with her eyesight, where she couldn't see very far, right? Because like she lived in the darkness all her life. So like she had a very she was short-sighted, right? She had her vision got fucked up. Her language got fucked up too. So she couldn't speak properly. even like several years later, like she had an issue with language. She had a lot of issues. Yeah, and like she didn't really know, like to her, that was her entire world. Like that was the world that to her, that was the world as she knew it. So it's not even like she was. Can you really be depressed over an oppression, which when you really, you don't really have a concept of oppression. It's like, yeah, I'm sure it was all very miserable, but like misery was her entire life. So I don't reckon she had all that many complaints, right? It's like she was conditioned to live in that way. So yeah, she basically lived as a caged animal. It's like, so for a person like that, right? It's quite a terrible example. Quite a terrible example. But that's what I thought back to. To a person like that, names would not matter. The names of things would not matter. And so it's I would imagine it's more accurate to say that one may not care for a name, but it's not, for as long as you have a concept, you have like a language system, for as long as you have language to communicate from one person to another, it's impossible to not name things. It's impossible to not put a name to things, right? Even if you were to call the thing creeping around in the woods, that thing, right? You don't have to call it a monster, right? You just have to call it a thing. It's like whatever. It's like, it's not. I don't think it's possible to not have a name. Say like for children, say like there's a child in the basket floating down the river, right? An abandoned child. What is the name of this child? This child's name, well, no one knows the child's name. It's like you either give the child a name or the child remains nameless. I think another okay, so it seems to me, well, look at that child who is floating down the river stream in the basket. It is possible that child has no name if no one comes to encounter the child to grant it with a name. It's like, so names only matter. A name only matters if there is someone, if there is another observer who inquires about something, and in their attempt to understand it, they throw words at it. They throw words at it. Like, what is this? What is this thing floating down the river in the basket? It's wailing and crying. It's red-faced, and it's puny. Its hands are reaching out, and it's floating down the stream. It's probably gonna fall down the waterfall. Yeah, it's like, whether you decide to take the baby out of the floating river stream, or you let it down, you let it go down the waterfall. Like at some point in time, with your interaction of that thing, you're going to look at it, you're going to think about it, and you're going to wonder, what is that thing? Well, there you go. The baby has a name. That thing, right? It's like it's